Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff. That's Anwar. Do us a solid. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, get notifications. Tell your friends about us. All of the things that we would like for you to do so we can just keep giving you the best free YouTube content covering University of Texas football and athletics that you're going to find on the planet. Do that for us. My birthday's in May. Hook us up.
Sweet.
Anwar, the NFL draft literally just right around the corner, and it's kind of not been a real topic. I don't even remember Pro Day, to be completely honest. I know they had it. I remember that Alex went to it, but now that we're right on the precipice of the draft, I don't remember a thing from it. It's not a year where Longhorn fans are going to be sitting around on day one and day two waiting to see someone in burnt orange have their names called.
Yeah, Catch, every year since I've been here, I've done the a live chat through the NFL draft, and I think Longhorn fans have always been cool, understanding maybe it won't happen in the first round, but understanding day two when things kind of heat up. And as I approach it, and I'm going to do it because I won't not do it because it's been kind of a tradition. I'm like, ooh, I don't know what we're going to talk about, because it's going to
end up talking football.
It's going to be a football conversation. Catch and we'll talk about the two guys who are in the mix. We're in the danger territory. Catch 2014 is the last time that Texas went an entire draft and didn't have anyone picked or selected. I remember, Catch, I was working at Yahoo at the time as an NFL writer. And I remember just going through, and I remember on day 3, I remember just going to my editor and saying to myself, hey, I don't think anyone from Texas has been drafted yet. And they're like, no. I was like, because I've followed the draft for years. And so it's always been, and I just remember thinking to myself as I'm going through every single pick. So I start looking, and I put that on their radar. I'm like, hey, I need to follow this because this is not happening. And lo and behold, it didn't. And that was like the first time in a very long time that it happened. Texas is in a little bit of a danger territory. We got two guys, Josh Thompson, Cameron Dicker, as the possibilities. But that's about it. Unless someone just sneaks in that we under the radar that we hadn't been talking about or hadn't been thinking about. It's going to be a really interesting weekend, and be interested what the conversation is going to look like from a Texas perspective by the time this whole thing wraps up.
Yeah, I think Josh Thompson is going to be a Sunday player. So, I've seen a couple of mocks that don't have him listed at all. And then I saw another mock that had him going in the 4th round. Somewhere on day 3 feels right for Josh Thompson. He tested well. He didn't test great. He didn't test so well that, he did Ryan Niblett things to us where it was like, oh, he did what? And suddenly you're talking about a guy a lot like we did with the most recent Texas wide receiver commitment just in one of our more recent videos on the channel. I guess ultimately I want to ask you if day 3 feels like the right spot for Josh Thompson. Is he definitely a drafted play? Any worry for him at all? Because I have to admit, I'm worried for him.
Yeah, I am. So there's the worry and there's your optimism. I remember thinking, back in 2015, Catch, when, Mikel Thompson got drafted. I didn't think he actually had a chance of getting drafted, to be quite honest with you, Catch. He ends up being
too.
Yeah, and what's crazy about that draft, he was a 5th round pick, obviously different positions. Mikel was a safety, if I'm correct, at the time. Quandre goes in the 6th, and Quandre ends up being probably, when you look at that class of 2015, Malcolm Brown, Jordan Hicks, Mikel, Quandre, and of course, Jeff Swain, Quandre probably ends up being the main dog. I mean, Jordan Hicks had obviously some very good years and still playing, and Malcolm Brown, but Quandre ends up being the guy that I think we look at and say that was kind of the stud of that class. I'm worried, Catch, because here's the thing I always talk about, especially as a former guy who covered the NFL and you've covered football for years. When you start hearing the projections of where a guy is, I always say you got to add at least 2 more rounds to that. So if you're hearing 4th or 5th, my math always tells me add 2 more to that easily. So because how many times have you heard a guy who's supposed to be like a first round pick, potential first round pick, who's taken in the third round? And so when you start talking about third day things, guys, there's the board that guys would, try to stick to. And when I mean guys, I mean NFL teams. And then, but you don't know where that person ranks in that board. And then you don't know if at some point someone slipped down a few spots and they're like, I need to get this person. So yeah, if you're telling me fifth round, fourth or fifth, I'm like, that's easily seventh to undrafted. So yeah, I'm a little concerned that, that's one of these things I always tell guys, don't throw parties. Don't throw any parties, because don't put any pressure to yourself. Don't have everybody looking at you and wondering when you're going to get drafted. Those parties don't catch. You've been to those before. Those things get stressful. those parties for the guys who want to throw and get a little bit stressful. If I'm Josh Thompson, what I'm doing, I'm hanging with my family this weekend, and I'm just saying, all right, me and my small crew, let's hang out. Let's see what's happened. Let's hope for the best. Because when you start getting in day 3, it's really a coin flip as to what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think the good news for him is obviously there's a difference in payday and signing bonus between 4th, 5th, 6th, even 7th round versus, if you're an undrafted rookie free agent, like the priority free agents will get like 25 grand, but it's not the most amount of money in the world. I feel pretty certain Josh Thompson though is going to be in a NFL training camp, and he's not going to have to try out to get there. So we're going to see him have a chance to make the NFL. I feel the same way about Cameron Dicker. I think you and I both believe Cameron Dicker is a guy that's worthy of being drafted. No?
Yes. All because of the multi-purpose, being able to kick and punt. That being able, it'd be interesting to see Ketch what he gets drafted as, to be quite honest with you. The special teams is one of those things in the NFL, like, there's a reason why Ketch, for the most part, if a team gets a kicker, that kicker is with the team for 10 years or more. And then when they get a punter, that guy's with that team for a long period of time. That's one area that they just don't want to have to worry about. Then when you get your guy, like, that's your guy. And so, yes, I think he's a guy that is worthy of a late pick, that 6th round, which is not an insult for, someone who's a kicker or a punter. But just because he has the ability to do both, I would definitely say so.
I would take him as well. I'm about to say Brendan Schooler's name in just a second. So like the conversation will slightly, I'm looking at the results from Pro Day, and it's amazing how I forgot he was the guy that stood out. I'm with you on Dicker. I don't know where you play him. I mean, he was really good as a place kicker last year. I mean, there's no doubt. I wonder what position teams would draft him on, because I think there's a world out there where he doesn't get drafted. Then he's got a bunch of teams that want to bring him in as an undrafted. That's what happens with there are only a few kickers every year and punters every year get drafted. Was he that good? I know the Oklahoma punter was, and that guy was really good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I've seen his name listed a couple times, and I'm a little bit like you. He's being projected in areas of the draft where guys are told they're going to be 5th round picks all the time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go that way. I mean, there's like 500 guys that all think they're being drafted this year, and 230 of them are actually going to be drafted. I actually saw a mock draft that had Dicker as Mr. Irrelevant.
Ooh,
and
it's some perks.
And no Longhorn player has ever been Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it stood out. I'm not rooting for that. I'd like to see Cameron go a little higher for his sake. But that was if he'd have been the second to the last pick, I wouldn't even have mentioned it. But he was actually in one mock draft, Mr. Irrelevant. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen that before.
Anybody who does a 7-round mock draft, I'm just like, first of all, you have way too much time on your hands.
I love them though.
But yes, for them to be like in the 6th round, this guy from Bethune-Cookman got drafted, and then they're in the 7th round, this guy from UTSA. And like, how do you even know who all these guys are? Those guys, too much time on their hands.
If we raise the stakes on those, like if you do a 7-round mock draft, you can enter a competition where if you get like 80% right, you win $1 million. If you miss, we cut off a thumb. It would be interesting, like, because there's such crapshoots. Like, they're getting to round 7, and you're like, oh yeah, no, this guy took visit the Cowboys, a couple of weeks ago. So I know they're interested in him. Do the Cowboys even have a 7th round? I'm going to put this guy in the 7th round for the Cowboys because there's a level of guesswork to it that, as someone who does rankings, I tip my cap to the guesswork needed to go into a set, because you don't even get the first round right.
No, when people screw that up, I tell you, like, it's my guiltiest of. I told this about me because you know me forever. My guilty pleasures has always been to look at mock drafts and watch them all go down in flames by like the 5th.
We're like constantly talking about Alex in our Slack channel during the draft because, there have been years when Alex has done really well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so he can hold his record up as this pseudoscience. And I say that as someone who does pseudoscience, right? I'm involved in rankings, but there are years where it's like, well, how many did you get right? And he'll be like, oh, the Dolphins traded the 8th pick and that just screwed everything up. And I got 5 and I feel real good about it.
Yes. And it's like, well, and to me, honestly, when it comes to mock drafts and the grading, like the first 3 of picks shouldn't count if you get them right. Like those shouldn't count. Like, because that's too easy. There should be like a percentage. Like if you get, and I know that somebody will come out and grade them. But anyway, I know we're off topic for a second, but just the whole mock draft thing. This is one thing when I was NFL writer, the one thing I hated the most that people wanted the most, and I hated the most.
As a consumer, I will click on your 7-round mock draft just because I'll look for like all the Big 12 schools, or I'll look for kids from the state of Texas. Like because I'm not paying so much attention that I know everybody who's available. Yeah. So this time of the year, I'll click on a 7-round mock just as a refresher course of, oh yeah, this guy's going to be a 5th round pick. I'll do that thing where I'd look at a few guys and turn draft evaluator and expert, where I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be a 5th round steal. Like I turn into that guy because I know his name basically. Yeah. I watched him a lot in the Big 12, and that makes me an expert on whether or not he can win a job versus somebody in the SEC. Real quickly, let's go through the other names of Longhorns that participated. I'm going to totally put you on the spot. So I'm going to give you a challenge, and then I'm going to join you so that I'm not hanging you out to dry.
All right, let's do
it. I'm going to give you the other names of players that worked out at Pro Day, and we're not going to give percentages that they'll get drafted.
Okay.
We're going to give percentages that we think they can make it to a camp in the summer.
Okay, so all right, so because we understand there's going to be the undrafted free agents who get signed, so there's going to be the priority guys.
This is basically going to be the rookie
camp guys.
We're talking about guys that we think can be signed to NFL contracts to like be on the 80-man roster going to camp.
Okay, that's fine. All right. I mean, Zach Shackelford made it to final cuts at one point.
No, there are going to be guys that I think I would invite to an NFL camp. I'm curious where we are.
Okay, let's do it
on this. Let's start with Cade Brewer. You think he's got any chance at all to get to an NFL training camp?
No.
I think he's got a chance, but I don't know how high because he's played so much football that if teams think he could play fullback, you know what I mean? He's going to be one of those guys that's got to play tight end, maybe a little bit of fullback. But there are dudes that come out of college all the time that are total scrubs, and I'm not saying that about Brewer. I'm saying there are guys that play his position that the NFL looks at and thinks like the Patriots. Patriots always have some fullback that did something else in college, so I don't know. I'm going to give Cade Brewer a chance.
Okay.
Ben Davis.
Ben Davis is an interesting one because the one thing I've always noticed in the NFL, when a guy is rated as a 5-star out of high school,
Sometimes they take flyers on guys.
they will, like, they won't give up on it. They'll say he was a 5-star in high school. I actually will say yes to Ben Davis because of the 5-star ranking.
You know what? I'll go yes as well. I don't think it's expected, but you're right. I mean, I've seen, especially when they're really like, if a guy was a former top 5 player in high school football, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if he's at that level, I'm going to say no, but I think there's a chance. Here's one, Darian Dunn.
That's a tough one on me, Ketch, because that's a guy who was thought of as, as an NFL prospect. And that's his reason for coming to Texas was to increase his stock. It didn't happen. And so I'm going to go with no on Darian Dunn.
I'm going to go with yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, of all the guys that we're talking about, he could be a sneaky late 7th round flyer. I mean, it only takes, he's got good size. He played well at the end. Steve Sarkisian wishes he had Darian Dunn back. And I would say of all of the guys that we're about to talk about, he would rank Darian Dunn either number 1 or number 2. I think he liked him as a player, and I think he thought there was more that they could have got out of him. It wasn't like Dunn had no choice. He was out of eligibility. He didn't get a COVID year because Sam Houston didn't play. So he was a legit senior, just didn't have the right to choose to come back like some other guys did. But I think if he could, I think we're talking about a guy that would be really competing for a starting spot in the secondary. So I'm going to say maybe with him.
Okay.
Jacoby Jones.
Jacoby Jones is that's an interesting one. You know what? Because when I think of it, when we go through my list of guys that I have here, I didn't think Taquan Graham would get drafted. And so is Jacoby and
No.
Taquan? You don't consider them equal at all?
No, not at all. And Jacoby was hurt to such an extent that, if he was healthy, if Jacoby Jones never gets hurt, I think he's probably a free agent pickup, but goes to camp with somebody. I don't know that he was ever as good as Taquan Graham, but you'd be talking about a guy that, again, the coaches, he'll get a positive scout. Like, the coaches will talk well of him. And I'm
going to lean towards no. I'm just going to lean towards no.
I am too, but I think there's at least better than a snowball's chance.
Yes, sure.
Derek Kerstetter. Yes, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he played too many games for him not to be able to make it somewhere. So I definitely see him as a person. I definitely could see that. Yes.
Justin Mater. As a deep snapper, I have no idea. I mean, I'm just going to say no. But,
I'm just going to say no as well.
But I say that I don't know.
Yeah.
Denzel Okafor, I'm going to say no.
That's an interesting one for me, Catch. I'm because we're basically talking about making it. I see Denzel signing somewhere. But I think I see Denzel probably more as a rookie camp guy as opposed to
I think Denzel's more of a USFL guy.
Yeah, and I would say with that, I probably have to say no. Yeah.
Brendan Schooler. Just real quick on Brendan Schooler. This is what he did at the pro day. He had the best high jump, vertical jump, 37.5. He had the best standing long jump, 10'8". He had the best 40-yard dash, 4.41. And if there's anything that'll get done in trouble, he ran a 4.69. Yeesh. He ran the second fastest pro agility at 4.16, and he had the fastest 3-cone drill. He's a draftable athlete. If you've never seen that guy play, and this guy played at Oregon and Texas, and I haven't seen his film, but I read out all of his testing. He's a guy that I think normally gets drafted. I don't think he has any chance at all of being drafted. That being said,
yeah, I'll give him. Deal? Yeah, because he tested well. He tested well. He played 2 positions in college, so you can say he's played wide receiver. He's played DB. He's tested well. You can talk yourself into him being raw, and I could see him being a guy who signed, and then and going from there. I don't see him playing on Sundays at this moment, but as far as
we're just talking about getting a chance.
We're talking about just getting making it to training camp.
Yes, not making a team.
Yeah, making it to training camp. Yeah, I can see training camp. Yes.
I'm going to say no, and I think it's going to be a bad beat. I think the guy probably, I memean, if you don't get an invite, you didn't deserve an invite, I suppose. But I think he's a good enough athlete. He's played enough football that, you'd think he only needs one coach to think that there's a little something there and it can happen for him. I'm just not completely sure. The rest of the names real quickly. Ray Thornton?
No.
Gabe Watson? No. And other than that, maybe the bigger question is, can Earl Thomas end up getting an opportunity? Because he's been out 2 years, but his agent is working, trying to get that guy's name out there. Amazing that a guy that literally was having a Hall of Fame career before the way it ended might change the way it's ultimately framed. Good luck, Earl. I'd like to see Earl get a chance to get back into the league. He certainly did not go. He went out in a blaze, just not a blaze of glory. For myself and Anwar Richardson, do us a solid. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, all that jazz. And by all means, come back for more tomorrow. We've got the modcast coming up later in the week. We'll have videos surrounding the draft, recruiting, you name it. We'll have it right here on the channel. But until next time, you guys take care. Later.